Hey, Peg.
Yeah.
The first guy to log in,
Yeah.
he's riding his bike.
Okay.
No, I mean, his video was showing him riding his bike. It made me think about that guy that became famous overnight for being on a skateboard with his bottle of, you don't know what I'm talking about, do you? All right. All right. No, good going. Oh, well.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi. My first image of one of your students was a guy riding on his bicycle. He had his phone. I don't know if you saw the news about the guy on a skateboard with his bottle of juice.
No.
Famous overnight. Okay. All right. There may only be the three of you. And I don't know if Justin's off his bicycle yet. Justin, can you hear me? Joel, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
Cool. Well, we may be very small in number tonight. Look, if you want to turn your camera off, that's fine with me. It's required you see me because I'll be doing a lot of writing, and I was not trying to imply anything about your appearance. I was just saying. Chastity, I look behind you, I see monitors, 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 and you're not even looking at them for this class.
I have 3 monitors, and the 3 that you see behind me are my husband's monitors.
Wow. What do you do?
I work at the Department of Employment Security, but I find it much easier to have multiple monitors for school and, well, any other thing, actually.
Are they letting you work from home?
I did for a little while, but I'm not able to anymore.
Okay. Well, we have 3 daughters, but one of them is a computer whiz, and she has multiple monitors. I've never understood. I mean, I've seen what you can do. You can, I don't know what the term is, but pull a spreadsheet on one monitor and slide it to the other one, which is, but of course, that's been around for 30 years, I guess. Jed, how you doing?
Doing well. No complaints. How are you doing?
Oh, I can find complaints. All right.
Nah.
Well, look, I've got a little after 6. I'm going to start. Before we get started on what I'm going over, or better yet, as we do any of you have any specific questions about the material or okay, I'll take that as a no. I did include in the bond chapter this reminder about your calculator settings. And by the way, this is for whoever watches this in the class. There is a reset key on one of the calculators. Well, it's on mine too. You don't want to hit it. That sets your calculator back to the factory defaults, which is 12 payments per year, and that's not what you want. Okay. What is a bond? That's the form of corporate long-term debt. When corporations, large ones, want to borrow money, they sell bonds. If you buy a bond, you basically are loaning them money. Now, the standard par value of bonds is $1,000. It's so standard that your author does not bother to put it in some of the problems. Years ago, the securities exchanges refused to trade bonds that had a par value other than 1,000. Their motive was to try to standardize things so investors would have an easier time in choosing between one bond and another. We're going to assume, to begin with, European style for the coupon payments. If you buy a bond, you'll get a check every year. It will be the coupon payment times the face value. So in this case, $60, 6% of 1,000, $60. The rest of the world sets up their bonds with annual coupon payments. Only the United States is different. We'll get to that later. So bonds have a par value, that's 1,000. Coupon rates, which tells you how much they pay each year to you in terms of a coupon check, cash, and a maturity. They don't pay you that money forever. This bond will pay $60 a year for 10 years. And then you'll also get the maturity value of 1,000 when it matures. So these are your cash benefits if you buy this bond. 60 a year for 10 years plus an additional 1,000 at the end. Now, the value of any security is the present value of the future benefits, whether it's bonds, stocks, or really any kind of asset. So what's the price or value of this bond if it's yielding 7%? You would put in 10 for the maturity. For the number of years, it makes this payment of 60 a year. Plus you'd put the 1,000, which is the extra payment at the end. You'd put in the yield, and that should be in percent form. That's simply consistent with what we were doing in the time value chapter. And if you then calculate the value, it'll come out negative. Every financial calculator, every spreadsheet from Excel to Z, for financial calculations, it assumes everything is an investment. There's 4. Some cash flows are positive and some are negative. Or you could think of this like cash in and out of your pocket. If you wanted to buy this bond today, that would be $929 and change out of your pocket to pay for the bond. Then in the future, you'd get back 60 a year for 10 years plus 1,000 at the end. I'm jumping around a little bit, if you'll allow me. Here is a Snyder bond. Par value is 1,000. The coupon rate is 7%. It's European style, annual payments. It has a 20-year maturity and the yield of 5%. Try this with your calculator and see if you get my check figure. Yeah, let's make that a little thicker. Did you get my price of $12.49 and change? How many of you got that? Okay. Now, going back to our first bond, the microdrive bond, was it selling at a discount or a premium relative to its face value? And how do you tell? Well, if its price is less than face value, that's a discount. Its price is $9.29 and its face value is $1,000. So it's selling at a discount. What about our Snyder bond with its price of $12.49? Was it selling at a discount or a premium? A premium, because its price is above $1,000. Now, I can't go as slowly as I would in a class where I'd have many hours to cover this. I say that each week, but it's true. So, what causes a bond's price to change? A change in bond yields. You know, if you watch the stock market, stock prices go up and down, right? So do bond prices. As yields change, bond prices will also change. Bond prices and bond yields move in opposite directions. If the bond price, I should say it this way, if the yield goes up, the bond price will go down. They go in opposite directions. And for that matter, if yields go down, the bond prices will go up. Now, why would yields change? There are several components that go into determining the bond yield, but the most important one is an expected inflation premium. When you buy this bond, you pay for it today, but you're going to get your cash back in the future, spread out over the future. And with inflation, those future dollars will earn less, will buy less, have less purchasing power. If the market expects inflation to be higher, if they get up today, all the market analysts, they look in their crystal ball and they decide the inflation rate in the future is going to be higher than they were thinking, they'll increase their inflation premium, which means they'll charge a higher yield. So if prices went, for example, if on the microdrive bond, if yields went from 7, learned it right, up to 9, the price would go from $9.29 and change down to $8.04. If yields go up, this is how much the price would drop. It was trading at $9.29. Now it would trade at $8.07. You'd lose $122. course, it works both ways. If yields were to go down, bond prices would go up. If the yields went from 7% down to 4%, the price would go up from 929 and change up to 1162. And you would actually have a windfall gain? A gain in the value of your bond of over $200. So what's the relationship between bond yields and bond price? Inverse. When one goes up, the other goes down. When one goes down, the other goes up. What is the term for the risk that yields go up, causing your bond value to fall? It's called interest rate risk. What's the term for a bond whose price is greater than 1,000? A premium bond. And for that matter, if we were asking what's the term for a bond whose price is less than 1,000, that would be called a discount bond. It's not really a type of bond as much as it is just the status of the bond. The status of whether the price happens to be higher or lower than par. And I already mentioned this. How do we determine the value of a bond? Present value of future cash benefits. So let me give you a little quiz to try, just for grins. I don't know. The Nino Corporation has 30-year bonds. That pay an annual coupon of, I don't know, 8%. Question A, what's the value of the bond? If its yield is 11%. Question B, how much does the value or price change if yields instantly jump? What did I say? The yield's 11, they instantly jump to 12%. And it's enough for now. Oh, I know what else. What is your yield? Sorry, I'm getting near the bottom of my screen. I don't write so well there. What is your yield if you buy the bond for $1,200? Those are my 3 questions. And I've run out of room. We'll work the C part on the next page here. I think you'll notice I didn't give you a par value because it's always assumed to be 1,000. Ooh. Look, I'm not disappearing this last question. I'm just putting it on the next page. Ah. What did I say, 1,200? For the first one, maturity is 30 years. Face value is 1,000. If the coupon rate is 8%, then 8% of 1,000 would be what, 80? And if the yield is 11%, I got a price of $739 and change. Did anybody get that price? Okay. For those of you who are not showing up, I guess you know you've got little, at the bottom of your screen, you can give a thumbs up or a hand clap, but you know. So if I ask you if you got the price, you could select the thumbs up, and that way I can still tell if you're Chastity and Joel. Yeah, there you go. Joel found it, and you got that price, I assume. All right, discount bond or premium? If the price is $739 and change, is that a discount bond or premium? It's a discount bond. Now, How much does the value change if yields jump from 11 to 12%? And they do it immediately. So we'd still have a 30-year bond paying 80 every year and 1,000 at the end. And if yields jump to 12%, anybody get, I'm rounding, 678? Notice when yields went up from 11 to 12, what did the price do? It fell. That's called interest rate risk. It's the biggest risk that bond investors face. There are other risks, we'll talk about those, but that's the biggest risk they face. Now, what if you could buy the bond for $1,200? Whoops, 80. What would be your yield? First of all, if you try this, your calculator will blow up. It'll give you error number 7 or something. It treats everything like an investment. So some cash flows have to be positive and some negative. What do I need to do? Which of those figures needs to have a negative sign?
Present value.
Yeah. If you bought the bond, it'd be $1,200 out of your pocket. And if you crank this out, did you get 6.5%, 6.47? Cool. All right, just the basics. Now, what happens to a bond's value over time? We've already determined that if yields go up, bond values go down. If yields go down, bond values go up. So if yields change, the bond value will change. But what if the yield doesn't change, but the bond gets closer to maturity? What if yields on our bond hold steady at 7%? A year from now, this is no longer a 10-year bond. It's a 9-year bond. And if you calculate the price, you'll find instead of getting, what was it, 929 and change, price goes up. As bonds approach their maturity, the bond price will approach par. So discount bonds like the microdrive bond, it's trading now at 929. Next year, even if yields don't change, its price will be a little bit higher at 934. So what happens is, for discount bonds, like the microdrive bond, even if yields don't change, as the microdrive bond approaches maturity, if these are years left, I guess, today there are 10 years left to maturity. If we get to the point where we've reached maturity, you'll find that microdrive bond is trading right at 1,000. So a really good test question is this: what do discount bond prices tend to do over time? They rise. Or for that matter, if yields don't change, if they remain at 7% for the microdrive bond, what will the price be next year? A little higher. It's a discount bond. Its price is less than 1,000. So for it to approach 1,000 as it gets closer to maturity, price has got to climb. And likewise, premium bonds, if you've got a bond trading at above 1,000, let's say when yields are 4%, I'm just making numbers up here. But if you have a premium bond, you expect its price to fall. For the price to approach 1,000, by the time it reaches maturity, the price has to fall. So how does a discount bond's price change over time? It'll rise. What will a premium bond's price do over time? It'll fall. So if you buy a bond, you could have two components of yield. You get the coupon payment, that's one source, but also the bond's price will likely change on you. So we often like to break down the total yield. Notice for our microdrive bond, we were saying the total yield was 7%. We like to break it down into its two components, which are called the current yield and the capital gains yield. Now we define the current yield as the coupon payment over the price of the bond. For this microdrive bond, whose price right now is $9.29 and change, and whose coupon rate, I think it was 6, right? I didn't write it out again, but it's the same problem. Then its current yield would be one coupon payment for the year over the price. It comes out in decimal form. So 6.45% would be the current yield. But you have another component yield, a component of return, and that's whether the bond price goes up or goes down. We call that the capital gains yield. And that's the change in price over the current price. Sometimes we just call the current price. Your author calls it P sub 0. So if yields stay at 7%, we would see our bond that right now is worth $929.76 go up to, what was it, $934.85. So our capital gains yield would be well, actually, the decimal is 0.0055. Sorry about that. Or 0.55%. So our total yield would be our current yield and our capital gains yield. The 6.45% and the 0.55% for a total of 7%. Now, what kind of bond is this? Discount bond, right? Because the price is less than 1,000. And what is it we expect discount bond prices to do over time? Rise. So here's a neat little question. What is the expected sign of the capital gains yield? With this bond? If it's a discount bond, we expect the price to go up. So is that a positive capital gains yield or a negative? Positive, isn't it? Let's try another one just for grins. These are in your slides, but it'll be easier just to write it out right now. Let's say we have a Snyder bond, 30-year Snyder bond with a coupon rate of, was it 7? Sorry, guys, I'm jumping back and forth to that's cute. I can't find the coupon rate. Give me 1 second. We've got a 30-year Snyder bond. The coupon is, there it is, 7%. So question A. What's the price of this bond? If yields are 5%, let's see, it's $1,000 bond. Coupon is 7%, so 7% of 1,000 would be 70. It's a 30-year bond. And if yields are 5%, I think I'm getting 1162 and change. Let's try that again. Oh, wait, it's a 20-year bond. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, one little thing. So was something. It's a 20-year bond. Not 1162 at all. It's what, 1249? Yeah, 1249.24. All right. Next question. What is the price of this bond next year if yields are still 7.5 or still 5%? Still pays 1,000 at the end, still pays 70 a year, still yielding 5 only. If it's a 20-year bond now, the next year it'll be what? Instead of a 20-year bond, it'll be a 19-year bond, right? So if yields are still 5%, if they're unchanged, then the price of this bond next year ought to be, I'm getting 1241.71. Did anybody get that figure? Okay, cool. What did the bond's price do over the year? Did it go up or go down? What kind of bond is it? It's a premium bond because its price is above 1,000. What does the price of a bond that's above 1,000, what does it got to do over time for it to approach 1,000, it's got to go down. Which leads us to our next interesting question. Back to part A, where the bond is still a 20-year bond. What is the expected current yield for the coming year? The bond pays annual interest of $70. And back in part A, today the price is $12.49 and change. So the current yield would be I'm getting point. In fact, I'm getting a negative 0.0056. No, negative 0.056. Not negative, I'm sorry. 0.056. Which would be a current yield of 5.6%. Now, what is the capital gains yield? It would be the price today divided into the change in price. And our bond today is trading for $12.49.74. But we're expecting the price next year to be, what was it, $12.41.71? I think so. So 1241.71 minus today's price. That's a drop in the price of $8.03. And that works out to a negative 0.006 or a negative 0.6%. So for this bond, a premium bond, our total yield would be the current yield of 5.6% plus the capital gains yield, which is a negative 0.6%. And we end up with a total yield of 5%. Which leads us to another neat test question. If you have a premium bond what do you expect the price to be in the future? What do you expect the price to do over time? Go down. A premium bond has a price above 1,000. We expect the price to approach 1,000 as the bond approaches maturity. So for a bond trading at 1249 and change, for its price to approach 1,000 by maturity, it's got to go down. So what does that say about the sign of our capital gains yield? If the price goes up, that's a positive capital gain. But if the price goes down, what would be the sign of our capital gains yield? Negative. We expect bonds that are trading at above $1,000, premium bonds, we expect their prices to fall over time, which means we expect the capital gains component of our yield to be negative. Okay. Jumping around some. What are you doing when you're refinancing? If you have a mortgage loan on your house, what are you doing when you're refinancing? Well, I'll put it this way. Which way would interest rates have moved to cause you to want to refinance?
Lower.
Lower, right? People do this, especially with mortgage loans. If interest rates go down, they refinance. If you've got a mortgage loan and you're paying an 8% interest rate and rates drop to 5%, you want to refinance. Basically, pay off the old loan, borrow new money at that lower 5% rate. When we refinance, because we get a lower interest rate, our payments are lower. So individuals like to refinance debt when interest rates have dropped. By the way, I need to back up on one more thing, just the definition. I talked to you earlier about what a bond yield is. If you buy a bond at, let's say that Snyder bond, better yet. Let's say the microdrive bond. If you could buy it for $9.50 and you calculate the yield, that worked out to 6.7%. What is bond yield? How do you get a grip on what it means? The microdrive bond was a 10-year bond. It had a 6% coupon. So it paid $60 a year in interest. Plus it paid $1,000 at the end. If you were able to put $950 into a bank account, then draw out $60 a year for 10 years, plus an additional $1,000 at the end, what interest rate would that bank account have to be paying you to support those withdrawals? That's your bond yield. When you think of bond yield, think of it like an interest rate on a bank account. Or for that matter, see if I can find something very quickly. I'm jumping around too much. We can go with this. Key point is, if a bank account would replicate the cash flows you get from investing in a bond, the bond yield is the interest rate that bank would have to be offering you to be able to replicate those future cash flows. So bond yield is very much like an interest rate on a bank account. All right, I apologize to you for jumping around. Okay, back to what we were looking at. Being able to refinance debt. Well, I've been really jumping around. I passed it. Okay. We as individuals, if we have a mortgage loan, you know, a home loan, we like to refinance when interest rates have gone down, when they're lower. Corporations like to do the same thing. But to be able to do that, they have to make their bonds what is called callable. Callable. For example, let's say we're looking at this microdrive bond, the original problem. It's trading at $9.50. It has an annual coupon of 6%, $1,000 face value. And the yield to maturity, I think when we first worked this, it was 7%. And it led us to get a price of $9.29 something. I'm sorry, guys, I'm not in great form. You do need the coupon rate. All right. Let's assume the bond's price right now is $9.50. If you recall, it was a 10-year bond. If you could buy this bond for $9.50, then your yield to maturity would be the rate of return you get if you get to hold the bond a full 10 years. So if we could buy the bond for $9.50, get coupon payments of $60 a year for 10 years, our yield to maturity would work out to be, sorry, catching up here. All right, Mike. I think I've pounded my calculator so much that it's not happy with me. Huh. Going for a backup calculator. That one's fried. .7%. We calculated that earlier. That's the rate of return we'd get if we get to hold the bond all the way to maturity. But our bond is callable at $1,040 after 5 years. What does that mean? That means the corporation, after 5 years, can force us to sell the bond back to the company at this call price. So if we buy the bond today and the bond ends up being called after 5 years, then our yield to call let's see. If we buy it today, we're paying $9.50. And we still get the $60 a year. Only get it for 5 years. And then when the bond matures, instead of getting 1,000, we get 1,040, the call price. So we buy the bond today and hold it until it's called. Then we get a yield to call. Let's see. I'll get 7.9%, I believe. Yeah. So the maturity is the deal we get if the bond is not called. Yield to call is the deal we get if the bond ends up being called. Now the yield for bond investor is like an interest rate on the bank account. We would rather earn a higher interest rate. From the company's perspective, they would rather pay a lower interest rate. Who gets to decide if the bond is called? The bond investor or the company? The company. However, would the company rather pay you an interest rate of 6.7%, or would it rather pay you an interest rate of 7.9%? If you're borrowing money, do you want to pay a higher interest rate on the loan or a lower interest rate? You want to pay a lower interest rate. So would we expect the company to call this bond in 5 years? Would we expect it to want to pay us a 7.9% interest rate on the debt or 6.7%? We'd rather They would rather pay us the lower interest rate. So in this particular case, we do not expect the bond to be called. We know the company would rather pay us a lower interest rate, a lower yield. Our yield is their cost of borrowing. They want to keep their costs lower. Now, let me make one up. I don't remember what I used. I'll make up something else. This is an example problem. A Ford bond has a 15-year maturity. It has a coupon rate of 4%. Right now, it's selling the yield. Let's make this big. 7%. No, use that number. 9%. Is selling the yield 9%. It's callable in 6 years at a call price of $1,100. That's the information. Sorry. Well, that's what I wanted to do. Okay. Question 1. For this bond, what's the yield to maturity? By the way, yield to maturity and yield are used synonymously. In industry, when they say yield on the bond, they mean yield to maturity. So what's the yield on this bond? I'm sorry. What's the price on the bond? Getting rattled. What is the price of this bond today? It's a 15-year bond, $1,000 face value. What would be the coupon payment? Look, the coupon rate's 4%. Then it'd pay you $40 a year, right? If it's yielding 9%, then the price of this bond anybody get like 596 if I round 597. All right. Second question. Same problem. What's the yield call? Note that we just figured out the price is 597. So if we buy this bond today for 597, and the company doesn't call us in, our yield to maturity would be 9%. But this bond is callable. Let's see, it's callable in 6 years at a call price of 1,100. So if we buy the bond today for 597 and it ends up being called, then it would pay us at 40 a year for 6 years and then pay the call price and that would give us a yield to call of
16%.
16%. I was trying to rig a problem where we would see the company want to call in the bond. I didn't, but would you expect this bond to be called? Would the company want to pay you a 16% return, or would they rather pay you a 9% return? They'd rather pay 9%. So we would not expect this bond to be called. In your slides, at some point, there is a problem where the yield to call is less than the yield to maturity. And the company would want to call in the bonds. Guys, I have been off all day. I don't have an explanation, I just have an apology. Let's look at interest rate risk. Interest rate risk is the risk that yields go up, causing bond prices to drop. And let's look at two bonds. They both have the same coupon. The only difference is the maturity. One bond has a 1-year maturity and the other has a 10-year maturity. What would happen to the price of each bond if yields instantly jumped from 10% to 15%? Well, for bond A, coupon rate's 10%, so the coupon payment would be 100. Bond A is a 10-year bond. And I didn't ask you to calculate this, but if yields are 10%, then this bond would sell at par. If yields jump to 15%, if yields go up, what will the bond price do? Go down, goes in the opposite direction. you'd find, as you expect, the bond price would drop. And that would actually be a loss in the price of around $251. That's with bond A, which is the 10-year bond. Now, what about bond B? Bond B is a 1-year bond. Pays $100 a year in interest and $1,000 at the end. I didn't ask for this, but if yields are 10%, bond B would also trade at $1,000. If yields instantly jump to 15%, this bond's price would also fall. But only, I'm rounding to 956. Change in price, it dropped by about $44. With which bond would you be more worried that yields go up, causing bond prices to fall? The 10-year bond or the 1-year bond? Which would lose more if yields go up? The 10-year bond. You'd lose a lot more than with the 1-year bond. So there is a universal truth. Other things held constant. Which bonds have more interest rate risk? Long-term bonds or short-term bonds? Long-term bonds, right? I don't know if you guys think about this. With a long-term bond, you could lose more if you use the bond. Or here's another way to say it. In the market tomorrow, which bondholders are more worried about yields going up? Long-term bondholders or short-term bondholders? Which set get burned more if yields go up? The long-term bondholders. The long-term bondholders have greater interest rate risk. Now, so far, all the problems have been European style bonds and European payments. And the rest of the world pay interest, their bonds pay interest annually. That's what I meant by European style annual interest payments. But we have the different. American style bonds pay interest annually. So for interest, for example, if you bought this microdrive bond with a coupon rate of 6%, if it were European style, you get a $60 check once a year. But because if it's now American style, they break this into $30 every 6 months. They take your annual payment and pay half of it in the middle of the year, half at the end. So the timing of when you receive your interest payments is different with American style bonds. So how do we work problems with American style bonds? It's easy. Instead of set up the problem based on years, set up the problem based on 6-month time periods. For example, this particular bond, this micro-drive bond, it's yielding 7%. Which means that's 3.5% every 6 months. Its maturity is 10 years, which means it would be 20 6-month time periods. With American style bonds, you work the same way you did earlier, only to find a problem, you set it up in terms of 6-month time periods. So, N for this 10-year bond would be 20. The yield would be half of a year's yield, 6.5%. The coupon payment would be the payment every 6 months. And you get that price looks wrong. You get the price of, it may be right, just I think it's working. Yeah. Y'all get a price of $928.94. You get a little bit different price for the bond. Now, what if we wanted to know what our yield would be if we pay $950 for this bond? We still set it up based on 6-month time periods. There are 20 6-month time periods in a 10-year stretch. The coupon payment would be $30 every 6 months. If we bought the bond for $950 and calculated yield, it would be 3.347%, but that's per 6 months. To get the annual nominal yield, you double it. So this bond will be paying a nominal yield of 6.694%. And your bond broker, the whole financial community, every time the quote yields their annual nominal yields, your broker will tell you this bond is yielding 6.694%. if you will give me a little bit of leeway, I'm going to make up another problem. I'm hoping things will snap together here. We have the triple X bond, Z, triple Z, ZZ, dollar ZZ top, ZZZ corporation bonds. Have a maturity of 15 years. Coupon rate is 9%. Right now, their yield is 7%. But the ZZ Corporation bonds are American style. Which simply means they make semi-annual coupon payments. So my first question is, what's the price of the bond? Since it is an American style bond making semi-annual coupon payments, we set the whole thing up in terms of 6-month time periods. So how many 6-month time periods are in a 15-year stretch? 30, right? It would be 30. If the yield is 7%, let me change that for a second. Say it's 8. If the yield is 8% per year, what would that be for half year? 4, right? The coupon payment is 9% face value, except they break it into 2 6-month payments of, I crowded that, didn't it? $45 every 6 months. You'll still pay 1,000 yen. So what would be its price? I'm getting 1,086. Anybody else? Exchange. Is its premium or a discount bond? Is the price above 1,000 or below 1,000? It's above 1,000, so it's a premium bond. What would be your yield to maturity if you buy the bond for just make it interesting. Let's say you can buy the bond for $1,200. No, $900. What would be your yield and maturity? I heard a voice, but it was like out of a tin can. And I couldn't make it out. It's still 30, right? Yield is what we're looking for. Present value would be what you pay for it. It would still pay $45 every 6 months. Now, because we set this in 6-month periods, the yield that comes out is 6 months. So I'm getting a yield of 5.16 per 6 months. So to get the annual nominal yield, I multiply it by 2. And I get yield to maturity of 10.33%. Is anybody getting my figures? That's good. Good. All right. Now, extending the problem a little further. Let's say that this bond is callable in 4 years at a call price of $1,050. What would be our yield to call? It still pays $45 every 6 months. And we're carrying Part B over. We could buy the bond for $900. How many 6-month time periods would there be in that 4-year span? 8, right? 4 years times 2 periods per year. We're trying to calculate the yield to call. If this bond is called, instead of getting 1,000 at the end, we would get what, 1,050? Again, it's American style. So the yield would be per 6 months. I'm getting 6.65. So the annual nominal yield would be twice that. $13.3, let's say. So if the company calls in the bonds in 4 years, you would be getting a 13.3% return. It would be paying you interest rate of 13.3. when the yield to maturity was 10.3. Would we expect the bond to be called? Would we expect the company to call in the bond and be a yield 13% when they could leave it out there and pay a yield of 10.3? No, we would not expect the bond to be called. All right. I'm jumping around on you a little bit. My speculation, and let's go back and let's assume this is European style, which means annual coupons. What if you buy a 20-year bond with a 2%, a 10% coupon rate today? All yields are 12%. And then you sell it a year later when yields have dropped to 7. How would the amount of that deal? Right, this is slide 54 if you got your slides before you. So today, we buy a 20-year bond with a 10% coupon rate when yields are 12%. 20-year bond, 10% coupon rate means you pay $100 a year. And we're buying it when yields are 12%. So what would we pay? Oh, I worked it out. What, 851?
Nope.
Okay.
100.
I think, let me see.
Yeah, 851.
Cool. All right. Now, we sell it a year later. When yields have dropped to, what was it, 7%? So what would be a year later? What would be our selling price?
Hey, definitely have a lot more juice.
No, get out.
Well, let's see, 100 payment, 1,000 end. If yields are 7%, and by the way, a year later, this is no longer a 20-year bond, it's now a what? 19-year bond. A year later, there's only 19 years left till maturity, right? So what would we sell it for?
1258. Or do I have that wrong? Hold on, I have that wrong.
No, it sounds right, actually.
Well, no, I had it wrong.
Okay.
1310, maybe.
That sounds right. Boy, my calculators have all been fried. All right, try this again. $13.10. Okay. So you buy the bond for $8.51. A year later, you sell it for $13.10. How did you make out?
Pretty
What
good.
is your 1-year return? Over that 1 year, let's see, you paid $8.51. Oh, and you got a coupon payment for that 1 year. And then you sold it at what, $13.10? I'm getting a yield of 60,
Six.
way up there, right? 65.7%.
Yes. What that?
What's the catch to problems like this? Can anybody forecast whether yields are going to go up or go down? No. I'll put it to you this way. If you figure it out, see me and we'll both get rich. Now, bond ratings. Bonds are rated. Actually, they're rated by Moody's, Standard & Poor. There are 4 major rating agencies, but their ratings are very similar. The rating is a risk of default, and that's all it is. Bond ratings measure risk of default. What does that mean? The risk that the company goes bankrupt, can't pay you. Now, what I want you to notice, and you've heard of these, you've heard of bonds being rated AAA, AA, A, and so on. The lower the rating, the higher the risk. Specifically, the higher risk of default. So this is a good test question. What if I've got 2 bonds that are identical in every respect? One bond is rated AAA. The other is rated, I don't know, single A. Which one would you consider to be safer in terms of risk of default? Well, what do you think's a higher rating, AAA or A?
I mean, obviously AAA. Correct.
AAA, that'd be the safer bond. So which one would have the higher yield? If we're faced with a riskier investment, what do we demand in terms of yield? A higher yield.
Yeah.
So other things held constant, other things like maturity and so on. The single A rated bond would provide a higher yield due to the greater risk. There are 2 or 3 things I want you to pull out of this table. One is the lower the bond rating, the higher the risk of default. So, you know, AAA bonds are safer than single A bonds. Single A bonds are safer than triple B, and so on. Something else I would like you to pull out of this is that all the bonds that are rated triple B and higher are considered investment grade. They're called investment grade. That's not just a label. There are a lot of investment funds that, because of their, I'm trying to say charter, that's not what I mean, but in their document of orientation, they state they will restrict their investment to investment grade bonds. There are a lot of corporate mutual funds and pension funds that are prohibited from investing in anything less than investment grade. And investment grade is triple B all the way through triple A. Notice it's not just the A grade. It also includes the triple B rated bonds. Now, over on the right, let's look at the default, chances of default. Let's just look at 1 year. If you'll notice, the percent of bonds that default within 1 year that are investment grade, pretty low. Even triple B is less than 0.25%, 0.23%. Now, if you look at the lower ratings, double B and lower, that group of bonds are called junk grade bonds. They're much riskier. In fact, if you look down here at the default rates, those are percents. Those are way higher than the default rates for the investment grade bonds. In fact, there's a big jump just when you go from triple B to double B. The risk of default within 1 year for double B bonds is like 4 times that or more than about 5 times that of triple B bonds. That's one of the reasons they make these groupings. They group the triple B bonds with investment grade and everything below that junk grade. So what if I was asking you on a test? I've got 2 bonds identical in every respect, except one is a triple B rated and the other is B rated. Which one ought to have the higher yield?
B.
The B, because
It's higher risk.
higher risk. Now, I told you earlier, the biggest risk that bond investors face is interest rate risk. The risk that yields go up and bond prices drop. These bond ratings, they don't rate interest rate risks. They risk of default, the company going under. Just to make that distinction. one more topic and I'm kind of burnt out, except I'll be glad to take questions from you. There's another kind of bond. It's called a zero. What is zero with a zero bond? What does that mean? It means zero coupon. So if I buy a 30-year zero bond, for 30 years, I get nothing. At the end of 30 years, I get the face value of the bond.
Is that like a savings bond?
To a degree.
Like my
It's a
mom bought
pure,
me savings bond?
what you're talking about are pure discount bonds. Yes, you pay one price, then you get nothing until the bond matures, and then you get more money back. Pays nothing in between.
Right.
Okay, so how do I find the price of this 30-year zero? If it's yielding 8%, same way we did earlier, except what do we put in for the coupon payment?
Zero.
Zero. Now, if you'll notice, you get a really low price for this bond. It's not just a discount bond. We refer to these as deep discount bonds. Now, how would you interpret this? If I put $99.38 in a bank account today, and then 30 years later, I get to take 1,000 out, what interest rate would that bank account have been paying me? 8%. Several years ago, before a lot of you were born, our interest rates were really, really high. And a lot of companies wanted to be relieved of they wanted to raise money by selling bonds, but they didn't want to make those big high coupon payments. So they sold zero bonds. These were really 5 out of 6 bond issues from corporations. This goes back to the early 80s, were zero coupon bonds. Even the government got in the act. Our Treasury sells pure discount bonds. You buy them at a really low price, you get nothing until it matures, then you get the face value back.
What's the risk involved in that? Because 30 years is a long time. So wouldn't the risk be higher for the default?
I would agree with you. The longer the maturity, the more chance you're giving for the company to go bankrupt. So the longer the maturity, other things held equal, the higher ought to be our yield. Because with longer maturity is greater risk, so we ought to get a higher yield.
Right. Well, I guess that's why there's such a big profit on that.
Well, now here's the funny part. When they first came out with these, investors loved the idea because they thought they would be treated like stock for tax purposes. They thought, we won't be taxed on our return till the bond matures. Wrong. Yeah. Yep, they made a mistake. The government decided to calculate your implied return each year and tax you on that gain, even if you don't sell the bond. See, normally individuals are taxed based on realized yield. If you buy stock and you don't pay taxes on the price gain unless you sell it.
Right.
Well, here's what they did with these bonds. They calculated the implied, let me do it on this page. What is your implied first year gain on this bond? If it's a 30-year bond when you buy it, then a year later, it'll be a 29-year bond. If it's yielding 8%,
$107. Is that right?
yep, well, that's the implied price.
Right. Would it be?
I'm going to round it, okay? They would say that your implied gain, even though you don't sell it,
107 minus 99.
yep. They would say you have an implied gain of $8 and you'd have to pay taxes on the $8 gain. So that popped a lot of balloons. Investors that were hoping this would be treated like stock.
Doesn't sound like a lot when it's just $8, but if you're getting
Well, if it's
way
50,000
larger,
bonds,
exactly.
yeah. All right. We've been at this for 2 hours. I promise you I will be in better form next week. I don't know, I'm just having one of those strange days where the brain's not working, nor the calculators for that matter. Do you have any questions before we leave this? Remember that what I'm doing with these Zoom meetings doesn't cover everything at all. It's just to hit the highlights and hopefully help you understand the material a little better when you then go to the slides, the lecture slides, or the YouTube videos of those slides. Any questions before we adjourn?
I don't think so.
Okay. I appreciate you guys hanging in there for 2 hours. Okay. This is being recorded, although I'd like to destroy it, given how I perform, but this will be posted to you to the class Moodle website, a YouTube link of the recording, probably by tomorrow, late morning. If you have no other questions, I'll say good night. Be safe. All right, y'all. Bye-bye.